Alright. Do you want to say it? You look like you want to say it.
Say what? I wouldn't even know what we say because we don't have an intro or anything. We don't have a catchphrase, right?
No.
Right?
Hi, Travis. That's our
Hi,
catchphrase.
Adam. How are you?
According to you, I'm pretty good.
Yeah, you look great. You look a lot better than you did last week.
Is it because I shaved?
No, you just don't look like death.
I do have not a soul patch, but just the stubble on the chin.
I just thought you always had a perpetually fuzzy face. So that's just
I try to.
how
I try to. So I'm what?
Your face is like a peach. It's always fuzzy.
Oh, it sounded like you said you look impeached. But I've been wanting to do movie content on this channel, and just hadn't gotten around to it in the last 3 weeks.
Me and you have, when we talk on the phone, we usually talk about movies and stuff like that. And I think what we're going to talk about today is the Spider-Man movies. And I think it all started when I talked about going back and watching just certain movies, and one was The Amazing Spider-Man, just because it has some extra downtime in the evenings. I don't have any real work right now in terms of comic book stuff, unfortunately. So I was kind of going back and looking through my DVD and Blu-ray collection, and I was like, oh, I haven't seen Amazing Spider-Man in a while. And that's how we kind of got to here, and I think it's...
Although that's not the movie we're talking about.
What is that?
Although that's not the movie we're talking about.
No, not today, but that kind of set us on this path, though.
That's true. So we're going to break... This is going to be a multi-part video. We're going to break it up. So basically we're talking about every Spider-Man film. But we're going to break it up by, I guess, franchise. So the Raimi films will be one. Well, I mean, The Amazing Spider-Man, neither one of us saw Amazing Spider-Man 2. So we're really just going to talk about Amazing Spider-Man.
I didn't watch it again recently, but I've seen it.
I thought you said you hadn't seen Spider-Man.
Well, I have. I've seen all the Spider-Man movies.
Okay, all right. We're going to talk about it a little bit, but I never saw Amazing Spider-Man 2. Into the Spider-Verse will be its own video as well. But today we're actually going to talk about, I guess, what people would consider the most relevant Spider-Man films, which is I don't know what you call it, the Homecoming series.
Yeah, it's technically, if you think about it, it's the only ones that matter at the moment for Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, well, to most people, for certain. Although we'll like I said, Into the Spider-Verse will be its own video, but I would consider that to be far more relevant in many aspects than any of these films. But what's interesting about these movies, so I told you thought I had owned it, and there was a point where I thought about buying Spider-Man Homecoming. I did not, and I just rented it to kind of refresh myself on it. I gotta say, I'm glad I didn't buy it.
Why is that?
So I don't want to say the movie doesn't hold up. A lot of it does. Did not enjoy it as much as I did when I saw it in theaters.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff in this movie that really bothers me. One thing so I'm looking at the IMDb for it, first of all. So there's 6 people worked on the screenplay, and 2 of them wrote the story. And upon rewatching it, it makes sense, because this movie has way too much crap in it. And when I say crap, I don't mean literal garbage. I mean there's just a lot of stuff going on in this movie. It didn't feel that complex when I first saw it, because it's mostly a fun movie.
Yeah. To be fair, a lot of the MCU movies, not all of them in recent years, but I could say I paid more attention to it when it had Captain America Civil War. When you say there was a lot of crap in it, like, thrown together. Mm-hmm. That's when I started really noticing that in a lot of these MCUs, they throw stuff together. And for me, I agree with you. And what I see in the Homecoming movie is just a lot of stuff to tie everything together. Like a lot of to like make sure if you didn't see this movie, make sure to see that movie, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fair point. Because Spider-Man: Homecoming's technically the first movie in this line, but it comes off more like a second film than a first. Because parts of it are actually recreations of scenes from Civil War. And it's very much tying in all these MCU threads. So it doesn't, the best films in any franchise are usually the first ones, not because they necessarily have everything together, because it allows it to be simple. Because the more cogs you have in a machine, the more can go wrong. And there's a lot of cogs in this movie, and I didn't really notice it. There's they try to do a lot of interesting stuff. I really like the tech stuff in this movie. They play a lot with Spider-Man being a scientist, and although most of the tech in it isn't his invention, it's Tony Stark's. But one thing I did notice on the second watching that I didn't notice the first time around, so when they made this movie, they clearly intended for the AI in it, Karen, to... obviously, we're talking about spoilers, if no... I didn't say that going in, but this is going to be a spoiler review.
Karen doesn't show up in anything after this movie.
Yeah, so Karen is clearly meant to replace his spider sense in this movie. They never mention his spider sense. Karen takes the place of it, and then I remember people. I mentioned it personally. I know other people mentioned it. Immediately in the next movie he's in, Infinity War, they show his spider sense. Karen goes away completely, and I'm trying to remember the not Homecoming, but Far From Home. Did the glasses have an A? I think it had a period. It had.
In Death, I'm the King.
Wait, what?
Edith. It's the acronym. Because they do make a joke in that movie, and it actually plays... I'll talk more about that in a second. But the acronym comes into play, and it's like, I'm Edith, and it stands for Even in Death, I'm the King. I'm the hero. I'm sorry. I'm the hero. Sorry, I messed it all up. Even in Death, I'm the hero. Sorry.
But Edith wasn't as much of an AI, right? Like I haven't seen Homecoming since it came out. I mean, Far From Home. I'm gonna get these confused, but it's just very weird. So you jump to these different scenarios, and I like Karen. I think Karen was a fun aspect of the movie.
Yeah.
I wasn't even put out that they got rid of the spider sense, because I kind of like they gave her a little character. It could have been a very simple role. Jennifer Connelly played Karen.
Yeah, that was an easy paycheck for her. She was great in it, don't get me wrong. The way they wrote her and everything was fine.
She probably knocked it out in like a weekend or something like that.
While her husband was Paul was playing Vision for the last time, maybe, in Infinity War.
Is that her husband?
Yes.
I didn't know that. But,
I don't know if they're still married, but...
So yeah, but there's a lot going on in this film, and some of it works, and some of it I like. I do appreciate that they went to a lot of effort to include Easter eggs in this movie, but then they kind of screwed with a lot of it. So there's a ton of race swapping. But, well, it's not even race swapping. It's more like there ought to be like a new term, like character in name only. Ned Leeds is clearly Gank from the Miles Morales Spider-Man.
Yeah, I don't know why they did that, but I mean he's a fun character.
He is.
In the movie, he's a fun character.
But when you name him Ned, as a Spider-Man fan, and look, only people like us know who Ned Leeds is. Ned Leeds is not a famous Spider-Man character.
Yeah.
Or at least not now. I mean, in the 60s, in the 70s, sure. But and they did that with a lot of characters. Liz Allen, also, they made her she's either black or mixed race, which was one problem I definitely had with the movie. Was like her character, like, when it turns out that Adrian Toomes is her dad. The whole time I'm thinking, like, well, is it actually her dad or is it her stepdad? I don't... Like, it gets confusing. Like, it's a twist that doesn't make a lot of sense. But
and there's also Flash Thompson.
Yeah, who is not a bad character. He plays the role well.
Is his last name Thompson in that? Or is it something else? Or is it just Flash?
I don't know.
Because if you think about MJ is not Mary Jane Watson.
No. And technically, Ned isn't necessarily Ned Leeds. I'm assuming it's Ned Leeds, but it might not be. But that's what they do, and it doesn't make a difference to the average person because these movies aren't made for comic book fans; they're made for a general audience. But
I do think they achieved that goal, though. I mean, overall, it was a fun movie. It was an entertaining movie. Mm-hmm. And that was the whole point of it, right?
Right. No, I do want that to show. Like, I do like this film for the most part. It doesn't hold up as well as I remember it, but there's a lot of fun in it and a lot of things I do like. I do like what's his name's performance as Peter Parker, Tom Holland. I'm not really sure whether I like him more than Andrew Garfield, but he's certainly a more fun character.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a difficult debate. I think between the two of them, I think they make a very good Spider-Man and a very good Peter Parker. But it's almost like there's aspects of Peter Parker that are split in half for each film franchise. Obviously, Amazing Spider-Man's a little more serious.
It's almost like a little bit more gritty. Mm-hmm. Than some of the, I guess because it came out after the Raimi movies, and also in a time where Batman Dark Knight was still kind of relevant. Mm-hmm. It's not super dark or anything like that, but it's definitely a little bit more gritty. And that one, Peter's dealing with a lot more internal struggles with his parents and everything. Mm-hmm. And of course Uncle Ben, but it's a lot darker compared to what Homecoming and Far From Home is like.
Yeah, they definitely tried to keep it more fun, and it accomplished it a lot. But there's also a lot of darkness. Like it's interesting upon rewatching Homecoming. Pretty much everyone but Ned and Peter are villains in this movie. Like the ultimate villain of the movie, to me, is actually Tony Stark, because everything in the movie that's bad happens because Tony Stark is an asshole. Mm-hmm. That'll probably... I forgot we're on YouTube. Like, I don't know if that'll pass or not. But anyway, you're not supposed to curse on YouTube now for whatever.
Well, you can bleep yourself out if you really wanted to.
I don't even know how to do that with this software.
But God forbid you use YouTube to look up a tutorial, huh?
Yeah. Anyway, but like the whole movie, Adrian Toomes is this super great guy who cares about his family and his crew, and he's a small business owner. Tony Stark sends bribes a senator or something like that, and then puts him and God knows how many other people out of business, which leads him on a path to crime. Then later, like when Peter discovers that there are these super high-tech weapons, he tells Tony Stark about it, and Tony's like, that's for the cops. No, it's not. Giant laser rifles made from alien...
Yeah.
Alien weaponry? No, that's an Avengers thing or a Shield thing, but Shield doesn't exist at that point in the MCU. Peter just making bad choices. A lot of that comes down to the fact that Tony pulls him out of his life, gives him this basically Iron Man suit that has like a kill setting for no reason. That's actually a really... I know they did it as a joke, but there's no reason for that in this movie. Like, Tony Stark wouldn't put that in there. But
but it makes for a great comedic thing when it happens in the movie.
But
like
they do that a lot in this movie. Like, instead of making the proper choice for the story, they go for the joke.
Yeah.
But
there's some great stuff that they do with this movie. I mean, even going back to the beginning, they kind of make you sympathetic towards Adrian. Also, fun call out for like a little Easter egg for Damage Control. Mm-hmm. The old Marvel book about the actual people that go clean up mess after all the superhero like fights and everything.
And the lead woman in Damage Control is Tyne Daly from I can't think of the name of the show, Cagney and Lacey. That's what she'll always be famous for. Do you even know that reference?
To be honest, Adam, I don't think I'm old enough to understand that.
You might not be. Cagney and Lacey. It was a big thing for. It seemed like a while when I was a kid. Yeah, when I was a kid. Anyway, but there's a lot of
the hell out of yourself.
Well, I mean, I know I'm 40. I'm gonna be 41 soon. Here's a weird one. Like, there's a lot of weird things with names here. So, Herman Schultz is the name of the Shocker. Mm-hmm. And there are two Shockers in this movie. And you would assume it was the white guy, because Herman Schultz is very much a Jewish name.
Yeah.
No, it's the black guy played by Bokeem Woodbine.
Yeah, and,
it
wasn't... Go ahead.
No, I feel like this is the people who wrote the film kind of being assholes about a lot of this stuff. You know, because they seem to do it with, like, every character. Or every other character.
I don't know. It's just probably the audience they're going after in terms of this movie.
Oh, I mean, I'm not saying the Shocker can't be black. I don't care. I'm just saying, like, why would Herman Schultz be like, if there's two and one was white and one was black, like, there's a lot of that stuff in this film that to me, and yeah, I realize I'm not the audience for this film. I'm a random comic book fan.
Yeah.
But,
well, is that still his last name in the movie? Because
according to IMDb.
Because going back to it, I don't think they give Flash his last name. Because I don't know if it's supposed to be Thompson.
Yeah.
Going back to the whole MJ thing, they can create new characters and we can call them Flash. I mean, what Flash was his real name was Eugene, and it's Eugene. Was it? Yeah, it's Eugene, right?
Yeah, Eugene Flash Thompson. Yeah.
Making sure.
So according to IMDb, Flash, Liz, Ned, and Michelle, and another character named Abe. No, you know what? This is inaccurate because Betty Brant is clearly listed as Betty Brant in the film, but they just have her as Betty.
Yeah,
so who knows?
They list her name in the little news segments.
Yeah, but here on IMDb it says her name's just Betty, so this might be inaccurate. Whatever.
The other thing they kind of thinking about, shoehorning in is Donald Glover as he's not the Prowler. He's
Aaron Davis. Yeah. And that's obviously having him in the film is a little joke, referring to the controversy of, there was a thing where he said he'd like to play Spider-Man. He said it was a joke, but the internet took up the cause, so there was fighting.
And I liked him, and he was great in this, but his scenes were, again, one of those things we talked about crap in the movie. You could have cut that out, his parts in the movie, and it still would have played out the same. And a lot of this you could have cut out and it still played the same. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there doesn't need to be two Shockers. There's no reason for that. There's a ton of stuff that should have been cut. But this does come down to the fact that like I said, there's 6 people who wrote the screenplay. That means, because usually whenever you see that many people writing a screenplay, it means there was one draft by one person, and then they didn't like that, so they brought in somebody else, and they wrote another draft that might have kept a lot or might have kept a little. And what ends up happening is a lot of movies that end up choppy are because of that, because they take little things from each script and it just kind of gets crammed together like a gumbo. But eating a gumbo is one thing, but seeing the chunks of things in a film it doesn't mesh as well.
But and all that said, because it looks like we were just really kind of talking about a lot of the negative things we don't really care for about it. But I want to talk about something I really like between both movies is that they really have that 80s teen movie feel.
Yeah, they were specifically going for John Hughes. I recall them saying, and there's even
totally have that, and it's fun. I like that part about it.
Yeah, there's actually a reference to they actually make it a little too obvious, but they make a reference to Ferris Bueller, one of the John Hughes films early on in the movie, and it's one of and I think it works really well, the attempt at the John Hughes stuff, and I almost wish more of that was in the film.
I kind of saw it a little bit more at the beginning of Far From Home. There's a scene where they're on the airplane together, and they have like this little montage of their travel, of them on the plane going to Europe, going to Venice. Mm-hmm. And there's like Peter kind of looking what MJ is doing, getting frustrated, and then like there's like a hand holding between Ned and Betty Brant, like stuff happening. Him getting into the bathroom, comes out, sees MJ, panics, and starts cleaning the bathroom. Mm-hmm. Which it is like, the whole montage is very like 80s movie to me, like 80s teen movie. Mm-hmm. But also at the same time, I'm like, what did he do in the bathroom that was so messy before that he's like wiping every surface down in the movie?
Really? We're going to go there? Teenage boy, what was he doing in the bathroom? Sure.
But then he comes out and it's I can't think of the character's name right now, but it's his rival in the movie for that.
Oh, the blonde guy, the guy that
it's the kid that grew up 5 years, like over 5 years, and now he's like this really handsome guy that's competing for MJ's affection too.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I thought he was blonde. Okay,
no,
whatever. Oh, was he? Of course he was. No. Here's the thing. Going back to Homecoming, the chemistry between Laura Harrier, who plays Liz, and Peter works really well for as little as they get to do together. And I gotta say, I understand wanting to go with Zendaya because Zendaya, is way more famous than the other actress, but they really should have just made one of the... I really like Laura Harrier in this film. I think she's really good. Yeah. And like I said, the chemistry is you actually feel the chemistry between those two characters in Homecoming. So they probably should have just cut Zendaya's part in this movie. It has no role. Everything that she does in Homecoming is actually distracting. She's there for a couple of jokes. One of them is like a weird race joke about the Washington Monument.
Oh, yeah.
That really took me out of the movie. And she's just and I like Zendaya. Not in this movie, but I like her generally. I know you said you haven't seen her in much.
No, I've never seen her outside of this.
She's good. She's a beautiful girl, decent actress, wonderful singer. You can't tell any of that from this movie. She's not very good looking in this film. Her character can just be listed as basically grungy, sarcastic girl. There's a moment where she said she has no friends, and I thought, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're not likable at all. And it's not Zendaya's fault. It's just the character is underwritten, and the only reason the character is there is so at the last minute she can say, even though her name's Michelle, she says, "My friends call me MJ," which the only people in the room are her only friends. and they don't call her MJ.
Yeah.
You know, but then in Far From Home, they just run with that, and they just call her MJ after that. That's
and also in Far From Home, she goes from the that grunge look to just be. She's still sarcastic, but that's like she's wearing all these like she's more girly girl. I don't know what the right phrase is.
I don't think she's girly, but I know what you're saying. They try to. I guess they realized in the last. And by the way, in Far From Home is a different writing team. Then like that's why it feels like such a different film.
Yeah,
it's not even written by the same people.
About it before when we had both seen this movie for the first time, is that all of a sudden he wants to be with Mary Jane. I'm sorry, not Mary Jane, MJ.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to be with MJ, even though in the last movie they had very little contact throughout the whole movie. Mm-hmm. No kind of romance in that first one, and then all of a sudden they're just like, okay, well, you know what? I'm in love with her. I'm going to tell her how I feel, and you kind of just go with it.
You know what Michelle feels like in this film, in Far From not in Homecoming.
Yeah,
she feels like that kid in high school that was in your class, but you don't notice her until like the last 3 weeks. Like she's there, and you're like, oh yeah, we've been going to high school together for 3 years now. And you never said anything, so I never noticed you. Like, that's who she feels like. And then, like you said, like, so in the next movie, Infinity War, presumably takes place, you know, maybe a couple months later, after Homecoming. And then immediately, you know, Far From Home takes place right after Peter's reborn. Mm-hmm. Clearly within a month or two. And, yeah, like you said, now he's in love with MJ. And, you know, putting aside comic book geek opinions, like, even for a general audience, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And it shows. They don't have any chemistry. I felt like the kid who played Ned and the kid who played Betty, I actually believe them. Like, they had decent chemistry. Even though it's clearly playing on, like, their opposites and all that. And
and that's kind of a funny thing, too. And I don't know for you, but when I was watching that, and it made me laugh because the whole quick romance thing was very relatable for me for when I was a kid, like seeing friends or like you go on some kind of group trip for school, and then all of a sudden there's some random relationship that starts over this trip and then ends by the same trip. I don't know if you've ever had that, but I've seen multiple times that's happened before.
Yeah. Was that when Zach and Kelly got together, or was that when Slater and...
No, I'm talking about. I'm talking about.
I know. Oh yeah, you've never seen Saved by the Bell. Whatever.
What's that?
Screw you. Anyway. So overall, what do you? We're gonna move on to Far From Home, obviously, but how do you feel Homecoming places in the greater pantheon of Spider-Man films?
You know, I think in terms of, man, it's weird because there's in terms of story and then like pure entertainment. For a first Spider-Man movie, I think it's like second or third for me. Mm-hmm. In terms of entertainment, I'd probably say probably like a third. Okay. Yeah. Because my first one's going to be, if I had to rate a Spider-Man movie, it's going to be Into the Spider-Verse. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about more of that when we actually get to it. And then my second's probably Amazing Spider-Man. Kind of Far From Home and Homecoming are tied for me.
Okay. That's interesting. I'm not too far from you. Actually, no, I'm basically the same. Because I give them an A for effort, definitely, because there's a lot of little nice touches, like the principal, apparently his name's Principal Morita, is the guy who was in Captain America.
He was in the first Avenger,
and then later he's playing his own grandson, basically. Yeah. And there's actually a picture of him, and I appreciated that. You know, that little. It's definitely an Easter egg. You have to be really eagle-eyed to notice it. But there's a lot of stuff like that I appreciate. You know, definitely get an A for effort, and it is still an entertaining film. Overall, though, the script doesn't really hold up. Like, I noticed a lot more on this viewing.
Oh, wait, real quick, can we talk about Hannibal Buress being in this movie and being absolutely pointless to why they have them in this movie?
He is pointless. So is the joke about Captain America. However, that was the best laugh of the film for me. It was just that one little moment where he goes...
You think, for the producers, like, kids love singing and stuff, we're going to put Zendaya in it. Who's funny? We need a funny guy right now. Who's the guy that spilled the beans about Bill Cosby?
Right.
Hannibal. Let's get Hannibal.
Kids love Hannibal Buress.
Yeah, kids love that guy.
No, but that one little joke about, I'm pretty sure this guy's a war criminal now, that was the funniest line in the movie.
Yeah.
And Hannibal Buress, I don't know if he came up with that himself or if it was in the script, but he definitely sold it. Like we talked about, a lot of stuff should have been cut from this film. It's got a lot of fat on it. But interestingly, and we'll talk about this in a future installment, obviously, Amazing Spider-Man, also a script that has a lot of problems, but overall, that's actually a movie I do own, and I like the problems with that script don't bother me. So that does, this is probably third for me.
Yeah. I think it's kind of tied with Far From Home for me, because I enjoyed that, but it's the same kind of script problems. Like, I was very entertained. I felt like I got my money's worth when I saw it in theaters. I ended up buying it recently. I ended up buying a lot of the Spider-Man movies. The only one I haven't bought is Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 2, which, funny enough, are tied for the worst Spider-Man movies for me.
I actually think Amazing Spider-Man 3 is better than the first two.
Oh, but you think Amazing Spider-Man 3 is better than the other two? I'm glad. I really enjoyed it too.
It's more entertaining than the first two to me, but
I bet it is. Amazing Spider-Man 3 was entertaining.
Anyway, before we move on to Far From Home, we didn't mention the best performance in the movie. Michael Keaton as the Vulture. Everything about like the concept design for the Vulture suit, Michael Keaton's performance,
and he was good, and also good on the writing team for actually including something like, all right, so he's the Vulture. What does he do? You know, he kind of picks over the remains of a lot of those Avengers battles and makes stuff from it, right? And that's
technically the Tinkerer. Which is as much of an Easter egg as you get. The Tinkerer is in this film.
But it was actually some fun stuff that they did there. I was like, okay, that's clever because it does make you think about it in terms of who his character is, I should say. And his performance was great. I mean, Michael Keaton's actually, in the last 10, 15 years since he's been doing more movies, he always is great. Like, you really see how good an actor he actually is.
But he's arguably the best thing in this film. Him and Tom Holland kind of even, but he's one of the best villains in any of the MCU movies, and I am so in love with that Vulture design. It's really ingenious. I feel like they put more effort into designing the tech in this film than anything else, because it's some really great stuff with all that.
Yeah, the costumes were great. Even like the early Spider-Man suit that they showed more of in this movie versus Civil War was really cool. Also, kind of cool little homages too when all the building fell down, or the warehouse, wherever, fell down on Peter, and he was picking it up. Or also even like the callback to the half because they showed like a half Spider-Man face and a Peter face like in the water. You know, which was kind of like these really cool touches that they did, and then him picking up the rest of the building.
You could tell that they knew their stuff. This wasn't the people. I'm assuming this was the script writers, Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly. who's a comedy actor that you'd recognize if you saw him. They clearly knew their stuff. Like I have some problem with some of the choices that they did with what they knew, but but I just wanted, before we moved on, because that's one thing that I think both of these films, Far From Home, did well as well, was the choice of villains and actors.
Jake Gyllenhaal, yeah. So obviously, I told you, me and my wife watched it, and that was like the scenes with Mysterio were probably her and I's favorite parts of the movie. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into more of that in a second if you want to start it off.
Let's just go into Far From Home. I think we've said enough about Homecoming.
Yeah. I mean, so like we said before, as far as this one starts off, picks up right after Endgame and into, they're going on this trip. Peter all of a sudden loves Mary Jane, Mary Jane, MJ. Mm-hmm. Loves MJ.
It's instinct. It's instinct.
Loved MJ, wants to tell her all this stuff, and it's a lot of this movie is him dealing with Tony's loss, and it's like kind of like the difference from the first movie and this movie. In this movie, he really wanted to, in Homecoming, he really wanted to be an Avenger. He wanted to be like Tony. And in this one, he's kind of, in Far From Home, he's dealing with that. Now it's kind of thrust upon him, in a sense. To be this hero, to be an Avenger, and him dealing with that, and him still wanting just to be a normal kid at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'd say the thing I dislike, though, is the Edith thing, because it actually...
Back Karen.
Well, not only that, but like it actually makes sense in terms of the way Tony Stark is portrayed in these films, because like it's incredibly irresponsible. There's no reason for him to have access to like this death satellite.
Yeah, and it quickly shows you why when he accidentally calls in a drone strike.
Well, only that, but like he gives it to a random dude. Like he's known the guy for a week.
Weapons that they could have.
and it just it's funny. It's almost like none of the writers of this franchise like Tony Stark, because it's Mysterio. I'm trying to think of Mysterio's real name. Quentin Beck. Quentin Beck knows from the start of the film that he can manipulate this child into giving up the keys to the death satellite, and Tony Stark is such a boob that he doesn't realize. Like it's and then even, I guess you can't read too much into logic, because technically, Nick Fury gives him the glasses, and Nick Fury would have known better. Yeah. So you can't read too much into it, but
I've seen it. But it's kind of at the end, the very end credits thing explains why that this Nick Fury screwed up.
I realize that, but I'm saying the Nick Fury who was at the funeral and probably would have gotten the glasses probably was regular Nick Fury. But you can't read too much into it. I get it. It's a film. It's got to go on. But let me ask you this. Personally, I was kind of hoping that Quentin Beck wouldn't be a villain in this, because I really liked him in the role that he was playing up until the twist.
I think that's what made him a better villain. It makes you like him, and that betrayal and especially for like my wife. Again, she doesn't read comics. She had no clue who Mysterio was. I didn't tell her who Mysterio was supposed to be. But what was funny for me, I guess it's like maybe people have this feeling sometimes when you show a video to a friend and you know it's cool and you want to get their reaction. You're kind of watching the reaction. As goofy as that sounds, I looked over and my wife was like absolutely shocked. You know how she is. Like, she's like, "Oh my god, did you?" And she's like, "Did you know this?"
I will say, even though it wasn't shocking for me as a fan, and obviously I know who Mysterio is, but the way they pulled off the reveal, I thought was wonderful.
Yeah, that was her favorite part of the movie, because like her jaw dropped as soon as the illusion started to go away, and It's like and Quentin says, now that, I think he says something like, that wasn't too hard, was it? And then they all celebrate, and, his all crew comes together, and they explain their plan, their evil plan and whatnot.
And as much detail as the previous writers put into, having comic book Easter eggs, the writers for Far From Home clearly put in a lot of thought into MCU Easter eggs, because they're pulling,
Yeah, the guy from Iron Man who got yelled at by Obadiah saying one of the best
Tony Stark built this in a cave!
One of the best.
I'm not Tony Stark. I used to do, that was my impression that I did for years of the dude, Tony Stark!
Because after that movie, I said that a lot, and then everyone who's seen the movie is like, "Oh, that wasn't funny in the movie. I don't understand why that's funny to you."
Why wasn't that funny? That was a funny
great
line. And it's not a funny line in the sense of it's not a joke, but it's his delivery is so over the top. It's just a fun line to do. I don't know.
I don't know if you usually do. I like watching behind the scenes things, and one of the things they showed about that, when they did that callback, they even went as far to even reshoot some of that scene, and they had a bald guy dressed in the same suit as the dude. As Obadiah Stane yelling at this poor guy again, so they can just get one scene in this movie. And the same goes for when they showed Quentin, because they explained that technology they're using, BARF, that was introduced in Civil War, which I had mentioned the whole acronym with Edith before I butchered what the actual acronym was, but they made a joke there. When
you made it into Edict.
Him liking acronyms, and they ended up using BARF, later on.
You made it into Edict?
Yeah.
The barf thing, it's a little over the top, but I did like, we got a lot more of classic teenage Peter Parker, being late for things, missing out, you got a little of that in Homecoming. Yeah. But you get a lot more of it in Far From Home.
And there was one scene in particular, if you want to say they had any, Zendaya and Tom Holland had any chemistry whatsoever. There was one scene where he went to her hotel room, and he was, this was after the big Mysterio fight with the, I think it was the lava monster.
Okay.
The lava elemental. And this after that fight, and there was kind of a cute kind of like, hey, do you want to? It's like, yeah, I want to. Do you want to? Kind of thing. It was kind of a cute scene, but that was it. And that outside of that, they really had zero.
Yeah.
Their interactions.
I hate the corners that they cut where they just reveal she knew he was Spider-Man. Like, it doesn't. Yeah. It comes out of nowhere. It doesn't feel earned, and I don't really know why they did it. I don't know.
Because it moved their plot forward.
Yeah,
honestly, it moves the plot forward.
It does, but not in a natural way, and I hate the end of this film. I didn't like it as much as other people, but I enjoyed this film up until the after credits scene. And when it got there, which we can get to in a minute, but when it got there, it actually ruined the movie for me. Because I like Homecoming better than Far From Home. Because overall, even though, like I said, I have more problems with it now upon second viewing. It's still an entertaining movie. Far From Home, to me, ended so badly with it. And if you cut off that after credit sequence, it's fine. Yeah. I'm fine with everything. But the second I get to that after credit sequences, nothing else counts to me.
I understand. However, the things that were so good in that movie outweigh it for me. I kind of had a problem with that, what you're talking about. But like we mentioned before, Jake Gyllenhaal's performance in this was so outstanding. It was so fun the way they wove that together. Even with Nick Fury interfering with the trip was like a fun thing for me. You know, like they introduced the character's name was Sergey, and they kind of like flung him in. Like they introduced him, and when they first introduced him, he looked like he was supposed to be some kind of hitman. Then he turns into the bus driver the next day when they're driving to. It wasn't Berlin. I forget where they were driving to in the
Paris
movie.
or Italy.
They were driving from Venice.
Were they going to France? I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah, there was a lot of speculation that he was going to turn out to be the chameleon. But he didn't.
Yeah.
That didn't go anywhere. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else there is to say but without getting into the two after credit sequences. Overall, like I said, I think they did really well with Far From Home. I don't like the fact that Karen's gone now, just like in terms of storytelling, because they never address it. She's just gone.
Yeah.
And the only reason she's gone is because they wanted to include the new AI with Edith and.
Yeah.
You know, and presumably because Karen probably would have been too smart to fall for any of the stuff that's going on. You know, in this film.
Well, again, it serves the plot that the writers wanted for the movie.
But it's just bad writing.
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, and not to make this about Star Wars, but think about how that played out between the three movies when they're handed the first from Force Awakens to Last Jedi, and how things changed from those two movies to Last Jedi, and then with Rise of Skywalker again to make things fit, like what J.J. Abrams had to do to make things fit from Last Jedi.
Yeah, but that's bad writing too.
Fair enough.
You're not comparing it to good movies where I'll be like, all right, you got a good point. It's like, no, those are terrible films. I'd much rather watch these two Spider-Man films than Last Jedi.
Had some really good qualities about it. It was probably one of the best of the three.
Last Jedi actually did have some good points, but
I was being sarcastic.
No, it actually did have some good stuff in it. I hate that film, but I can't pretend there was nothing good in it. There was. Anyway, that's a different discussion. So let's start with the Nick Fury reveal. What you were saying earlier about stuff that complicates a film coming from other. There's no reason for the Nick Fury subplot. It's just there to set up.
Yeah, didn't you also, when you saw that, you haven't seen Captain Marvel, right?
No, I've never seen Captain Marvel.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Captain Marvel, that whole extra reveal is pointless too, because people were probably confused as hell. Because I know some people who haven't seen Captain Marvel.
Right. Well, obviously I know who the Skrulls are because I'm a comic book fan.
Yeah.
And actually, what's interesting though is they include the Skrulls in Captain Marvel, but that was the first inclusion of the Skrulls. Originally, the Chitauri were used because they didn't have the rights to the Skrulls. And
yeah.
I guess they didn't know whether they did or something like that. So they went with the Chitauri, who were from the Ultimates comics. And that was in Avengers. And then Captain Marvel was the first time they actually used the Skrulls.
Yeah.
But that's a rights issue. No one cares about that but people like us. I think it's a fun reveal, and I get where they're going with it, in theory. But it takes you out. Like, every time Nick Fury does something weird, it takes you out of the movie. And that's not good script writing either. Like, it interrupts the flow of this movie to service a movie that who knows when that's going to come out. Presumably it'll be the next Avengers, or maybe it'll be Captain Marvel 2, which is coming out, I think now it's coming out in 2022. So
yeah.
Another 2.5 years or 2 years, something like that. And at that point, 3 years after this movie will have come out. So it's a fun reveal. I didn't actually realize that there was a second after credit scene. I didn't find out about it till later, and I had to look it up online.
Yeah, I'm actually to the point where I hate waiting for those things. Not that I don't have patience. It's just not worth it anymore to sit on that. So they've actually become kind of an old trick, to get people to kind of sit through, I guess.
Well, especially since there's 2 now.
Yeah.
Like, when you're doing 1, okay, you see it, that's fine. And sometimes they're jokes, and I get it, but there doesn't need to be 2.
And there's no payoff, or anything. It really... Right. It's not. You could argue about seeing the reveal of Nick Fury and Hill, Maria Hill as Skrulls. Mm-hmm. But that's not much. The only one that was probably worth it, even though you hated it, was the whole J. Jonah Jameson.
No, I like the reveal of him. I like the J. Jonah Jameson's play.
That they did in a kind of a fun and clever way to modernize, I guess, the Daily Bugle in a sense, to make it this kind of online, J. Jonah Jameson, a crazy online Alex Jones type character.
Yeah, and it's specifically an Alex Jones reference. They even mentioned that, which, I mean, I don't care, but it's unnecessary.
Yeah, I know,
but it does work. It does work. And I love that they brought back, can't think of his name, the actor.
Oh, yeah, God dang it, why can't I think of his name right now? From the Farmers commercials.
From the Farmers insurance commercials?
That's what he's known for, right?
Yeah, that's what he's known for. He's not known for, he's not known for Spider-Man or that movie Drumline or whatever it's called, but anyway... here's my problem with that after.
By the way, it's J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons, there you go. I don't know why I didn't remember that because I always think J.K. Rowling.
He was in the
Spider-Man
in the Drumline movie, as you had said, right?
No, whatever the movie is about the drummer, huh? Anyway, so here's my problem with, and this is why Far From Home is ruined for me. So I get what they're going for. J. Jonah Jameson comes out. He reveals that Spider-Man's a menace. Here's the problem. In the original comics, J. Jonah Jameson calls Spider-Man a menace because some guy wearing a Spider-Man costume robs a bank. Mm-hmm. So Spider-Man's a criminal. In this universe, the video that's leaked accuses Spider-Man of being a mass murderer and an international criminal. There would be a worldwide manhunt for him. There's no. Think about what we talked about with these previous 2 films. It's going for a John Hughes vibe. It's lighthearted. That's what we liked about the movies. The next movie, he's not a kid with a girlfriend who's trying to balance his Spider-Man life and his regular life. Now, he and Aunt May have to go on the run. There's no good place for this film to go.
Fan theories also point out that this could be a way to bring in Daredevil as his lawyer to defend him. Let
me stop you there. Let's assume that's true. Would you want to watch a movie about Spider-Man in court with Matt Murdock?
I mean, I could see that if they have good writers, they can make that.
Shut up! You're lying.
No, they could. They could.
That no one wants to watch a movie about Spider-Man in court. Nobody wants to see Spider-Man going to The Hague. It's a dumb.
What if it was Night Court but with Spider-Man?
Yes.
That's a dated reference.
If Harry Henderson or Harry Anderson. Harry Anderson. I think I just confused Harry Anderson with Harry and the Hendersons, the old Bigfoot film from the 80s. If Harry Anderson comes back to life and is the judge, I'll change my mind. For the time being, it is an awful story idea that ruins the rest of that movie and ruins that franchise. When people were upset that Sony was taking back Spider-Man and he wasn't going to be MCU, I was like, who cares? Why? I don't want to see the next Spider-Man film. I honestly, I'm actually shocked. it may, because everybody that I had known that saw the movie saw it before me, because I was on a cruise when it came out, and everybody was like, "Oh man, this is one of my favorite MCU films." And then I saw it, and I was like, I don't know. It's like, look, this whole movie changes for me if you cut off that scene, but I can't get around it. Like I said, the idea that Spider-Man's being accused of being a mass murderer, I don't, and also at this point you also have like a sort of a. It's funny, like art imitates or life imitates art. Now we have that software, what do they call it, where AI can make videos of you. That you know what I'm talking about? I can't think of the name of the software. Deepfake. Now you have the deepfake stuff, so it ends up, which came out not long after this film.
If we're gonna say something about this that could have easily still made sense, especially in the Spider-Man thing, in the Spider-Man universe, they could have just said or made something to make it that Spider-Man was the accomplice to it. You know what I mean? So just being, or was in on it. I don't know if that still would have done the whole mass murder thing. There's still people, I guess, died. They didn't show any deaths, but you could assume by all the havoc that was there. What was it?
Yeah, it was thousands and thousands of drones firing. Yeah. And, well, not only that, but I mean, at the very least, like he's accused of murdering Quentin Beck.
Yeah.
So whatever. It is what it is, and I guess we'll see. I mean, have they even announced when the next movie's coming out? I don't think they have.
July 2021.
Okay. All right.
Something too, and I was really hoping they wouldn't do it, because apparently in all Marvel movies they always love to kill off the villains, except for like Loki. And they didn't kill off Adrian Toomes back in Homecoming, but they killed off Quentin Beck. And I really wish that didn't happen. Like, and they just found a way just to leave, to keep him around, or maybe he still might be alive for all we know. But no, at the end, he asks Edith if this is real or illusion. She says there's no more illusions. I know what you're saying. I'm fine with him being dead at this point. Again, I don't think I'd want to see the next Spider-Man film, but there's so many great villains for them to go to. Kraven the Hunter, Dr. Octopus hasn't been done since 2007, 2005. Yeah, 2005, something like that. And I don't understand why fans for some reason I think want Venom. They always want Venom, even though they had the Venom movie or whatever, to come into these Spider-Man movies. But I want to see a Kraven the Hunter version, like live action. I would like to see that as a fan. I think that would be a great villain for the next one. I'm gonna go ahead and take a guess is that's what they're planning, because if there's a worldwide manhunt for Spider-Man, man, how cool would that be?
Kraven the Hunter.
If you had to do a fantasy casting like the old Wizard magazines, who would you cast as Kraven off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I'm actually thinking Jason Momoa would have been a really cool Kraven the Hunter. I think
Roven the Hunter? My man!
That was actually a pretty decent impression. No, I think he has the right look. He's got the right mask. You could go with a wrestler, maybe.
Oh yeah, you could. You know who just
Batista could be good. Wait, well, no, you can't use him because it's an MCU film. Well, no.
What'd you say?
Batista, as in Dave Batista, as in Drax. But since he's in costume in Drax, I guess you could use him.
Yeah, I would say just looks. If I was going to base it off of purely looks, do you know who Roman Reigns is?
Yeah.
I could kind of see him doing that. He has the build for it too.
John Cena would probably be good because John Cena's not a great actor, and
couldn't see that. Also, where is Craven originally from? Isn't he from?
He's Russian.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. He's Russian, as far as I know.
You can get an aged Arnold to be Craven the Hunter.
An aged Arnold? Oh, Schwarzenegger? I didn't know. I didn't know where you were going. I was like, "Hey, Arnold."
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay, Sergei Kravinov was born in Volgograd, Russia. I don't know if that's a real place. Actually, let me. Yes, Volgograd actually exists and looks beautiful. Yeah. Believe it or not. I'm gonna go ahead and stick with Jason Momoa. I think Jason Momoa would make a great. Well, I guess it depends on if he could get the accent right. But he's got the look. He's got the look.
No,
if he cuts his hair.
Jason Momoa does not do accents.
What is that? An old saying? Like, did your grandmother tell you that?
Yeah, dude, it's like the accent.
Travis.
You remember when he was?
My poppy told me Jason Momoa doesn't do accents. Do you remember that?
Remember, like, how much acting he did in Aquaman? Oh, wait, he didn't do any acting. He was just playing Jason Momoa.
To be fair, no one did acting in Aquaman, and actually, that's a movie we should talk about. He
actually spent a car ride hating on that movie.
Yeah, we should. If I could stomach renting the movie and watching it again, maybe we'll do it.
I don't want to.
Then we could talk about Me Too and Amber Heard and how she should be fired now.
Actually, I will say something Aquaman has in common with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies and the Amazing Spider-Man movie is because at the end of those movies, a lot of times, it would end in a narration of them coming to grips with what happened in the movie. Mm-hmm. Like in Spider-Man, the Spider-Man movies, for instance, he'd be flinging through the city and be like, and that's why I'm Spider-Man, and then cut the credits. And they did the same thing with Aquaman. Mm-hmm. And he breaches the water and he pauses in midair.
I actually compare it more to a Street Fighter, the movie moment, when they do the action pose.
That was the only part of the movie that was Street Fighter, really, was like the poses.
Well, anyway, this is going on for an hour now, so let's end it here. I don't know which one we're going to do next. I'm leaning towards Amazing Spider-Man, though.
Yeah.
And
I know how you feel about the Sam Raimi ones, and probably
I have to rewatch them to even talk about it because I haven't seen those movies in years.
Yeah.
So, but thank you, Travis.
Thank you, Adam.
Okay. All right. We'll see you on the next one.
Yeah. See you on the next one.